I feel when you're an outsider, not in the industry of product management, it seems like a big giant.
Probably shouldn't say this, but product management isn't hard. Product management is really just about finding a problem and then finding a solution to it.
As long as you're willing to solve the problems and you're willing to learn about the domain, you can get into it.
Without being able to communicate and tell a story, you get nowhere.
Hello everyone, welcome to Curious Souls. This is a place where you learn from experts, you learn different strategies, you get inspired about different topics such as engineering, product management, finance, and everything in between. Today I have my wonderful co-host Ankita Mishra with me.
Thank you, Rishab. Hello, everyone. My name is Ankita Mishra. I'm a senior product manager at Microsoft. And if you have not subscribed yet, please click that subscription button right below. It helps Rishab and I to get some of the best industry experts into our podcast and talk about various things. Also, if you like this episode, please feel free to comment below and also let us know what topics you would like to learn more about in the upcoming episodes. Guest today that we have with us is someone really special. He has been part of my product management journey from the start till today. Jeff Kizner is a product manager leader and has been in Microsoft for 15 plus years. He has launched various products within Microsoft and has spoken in conferences worldwide. Beyond his technical skills, he is an amazing mentor and leader who always teaches his team and all the other people how to empathize with the customers and have a customer-centric approach. Every person that I've spoken to in the past 4 years who has worked with Jeff Kizner has told me that he is an amazing lead and how much they owe to him for their success. So please welcome Jeff Kizner to our podcast, Curious Souls. Hello, Jeff.
Hello, thanks for having me. I appreciate that introduction. I think I'm just going to drag you around with me and have you introduce me at meetings going forward.
That was a lovely introduction, Ankita. Thank you for that. Let's hear from Jeff himself. Jeff, why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us about your journey into product management. How did you get into PM side of the things, challenges you face in your career and things of that nature?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I'll start by saying, I wasn't meant to be here. I wasn't meant to be a product manager. It certainly wasn't a goal of mine. I went to school at a small university in Connecticut and really didn't know what I wanted to do when I got there. In school, I excelled at math and science. They didn't call it STEM back then, but those were things that came naturally to me. And I went to college and I remember this very clearly, I took a linear algebra class in my first semester there, and I hated every minute of it. I walked away from it thinking, if I want to get into mathematics, which came very naturally to me, I would have to go through years and years of stuff that other people did before I got to the creative side of the area. And so I dropped that and I started focusing on things where you could be creative right from the start. And so I focused in on English literature, basically.
Oh, wow.
And that's what I did in college. I fell into tech by accident. I needed a job while I was at school. So the second semester I looked around and found that most of the jobs on campus were reserved for what was called work-study students. These are people that were on financial aid and needed a job as part of that financial aid package. And I wasn't. I paid my way through college and found that the computer department was really one of the very few that was hiring people that were not on work study. And so I applied there with very limited experience. We had a Macintosh computer in my house growing up. That's what I used. And they were hiring somebody to do help desk in their computer lab.
Right.
This was way before everybody came to school with their own computer, with their own phone. I mean, if you brought one, you might have been lucky. So we had, large labs with a bunch of Macs, a bunch of PCs. Back in the day, we used to have silicon graphics machines for specialized applications.
Oh, wow.
We had VAX clusters, which I'm sure some of your listeners have never even heard of.
Same.
Not us also. I said, I was like, what are wax clusters?
So I knew the Macs really well. I didn't know any of the other stuff, but I interviewed and, did well enough. And they said, hire, come join us. And so I was doing tech support for students that would come and use the labs. And it would range from all things, help me print. I can't print my paper, or, oh my God, I've spent 3 days writing this term paper and I just lost it. Can you recover it?
Oh, wow.
Definitely had, one young student crying, in my lap, basically trying to recover her paper. But I did that for a semester. And at the end of the year, my boss came and said, hey, over the summer, we're going to upgrade all these Windows 3.1 machines to Windows NT4, and we're going to create something called a domain and integrate it with our Novell NetWare, and we need to do something on DNS, and I didn't know any of these things. So she handed me a book, and I said, sure, I'll stick around for the summer. And that's where I started. I started learning about Windows and domains and DNS and all of these topics, and found that I really enjoyed it. And it actually was a way to exercise the creativity that I was looking for inside a problem-solving arena. In the English literature world, you get to be creative, but you're not really solving any problem.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes, true.
Quite a bit. And so I just did that for the 3 years that I was at school, 3.5 years that I was at school. And as I was getting ready to graduate, there was kind of a choice to be made. Go to Japan and teach English, which was high on my list, or do something else. And I started looking at the classified section of the New York Times. There's another big difference, is you found jobs by looking at the actual newspaper, and found tech companies that were hiring, recruiters that were advertising. I was like, well, I could go back to New York City and check it out.
So interesting.
And found a startup, an internet startup that was hiring, and joined them. And I was an IT pro right there. And that's how I got into it.
Wow. It sounds like a movie story. It's just like, well, you were destined to be here.
Right, and this is so different from the journeys that you usually have today, right? People are usually getting into undergrad for computer science engineering or doing MBA to get into PM. But this is a good reminder that it doesn't matter what background you come from, as long as you're, willing to solve the problems and you're willing to learn about the domain, you can get into it.
That's
and I think I have a lot of examples in my team who are not like, undergrad in computer science engineering, but they have paved their way into, Microsoft as a PM or as an engineer, which is great.
I think Jeff and I, we both are one of them, or two of them.
Yeah.
Even I'm a chemical engineer.
True.
But, okay, moving on. I don't know, most of you listening to this interview don't know, but Jeff interviewed me in 2017 for my Microsoft intern position. And I know a lot of you have reached out to either Rishab or me asking about what are the skills that are required in product management. So this episode is for everyone who's aspiring to be a product manager or a product manager leader, or want to do better in their career as a PM, right? So Jeff, I remember that interview was fun. It was nerve-wracking. It was amazing. It was one of the best interviews I had in the entire day. And I had so much fun. So I know you have been in Microsoft for 15 plus years, and you must have taken more than 1,000 plus interviews. What are the skills that you look in a candidate that differentiates between you taking them in Microsoft versus not?
Yeah, it's a good question. Before we get into it, I think maybe 1,000 interviews is a little high. We're in the hundreds. But I am curious, was the experience intimidating because of me? Was I the intimidating part of it, or was it just, an internship at Microsoft and the like?
I think both. I would say that Microsoft was my dream company. So it was like, absolutely, I was like, I have to answer every question well.
Yeah.
And then you were asking really good questions. Like everybody else, I would say they were asking good questions, but your questions were like a little challenging, which was good in a way that I learned about myself, that I can handle stress and those questions. So I would just...
Good to hear.
Yep.
So what I'm looking for in an interview and candidates is going to change depending on, who they are and the time that they're in industry or coming out of university. If I'm hiring somebody from industry that's been in their field and in their role for, 5, 10, 15 years in some cases, I'm going to look at them and ask them questions that are very different and have expectations that are different than when I'm looking at an intern candidate or a university hire. And I think that's natural. But the thing that I'm looking for in all of them, and the thing, if you ask me what skill you need to succeed as a product manager, I will distill it down to one. It's very simple. It's storytelling.
Love it. Soft skill.
I love it.
Certainly, as product managers, as people that get paid to ship software, we need to know and learn how to get things done, how to work with other people, collaborate across a company like Microsoft. But without being able to communicate and tell a story, you get nowhere. And the way I think of it is that every interaction you have, whether it's a presentation to thousands of people at a conference, or a one-on-one with your manager, or a one-line email as part of a larger conversation, you're telling a story, right? You're trying to bring the audience, the listener, on that journey with you to get to the point that you're trying to make, the conclusion that you want to get there. And without that, it doesn't matter if you have great ideas. If you can't bring people on that journey, you get nowhere. So that's the one thing. I believe you can teach anybody anything, right?
That's true.
And so, sometimes you're hiring for a specific role and a specific skill set, and you're looking for that expertise, that knowledge, that skill that they've already developed. But if you don't need that, then you're looking for people that can develop those, that show the aptitude and the curiosity that to go explore. And so there's probably one question that I ask every interview, which is, what gets you excited, right? And sometimes they'll say, can you narrow it down for me? And I'll say, okay, in the field of tech, as you read, you see things scroll across your feed, what gets you excited? And most people will kind of default to the hot topic of the day. So if I interviewed somebody today, they'd say ChatGPT is super interesting, right?
Yeah.
And, that's fine. But when you find somebody that's really excited, they'll come out of left field with a topic, an idea, an area you've never seen before, you've never heard of before, and they're super passionate about it. It has nothing to do with being a product manager at Microsoft. It just gets them excited. And you look at those people, I look at those people and go, those are the people that have something, that are interested, are going to be engaged on a day-to-day basis, and are going to want to learn something new.
Absolutely. I think I 100% agree with you for your number one, which is communication storytelling. As PMs, first-hand experience, engineers don't report to us, right? And the team doesn't report to us. And still we are sort of responsible to make sure that everybody aligns with our vision. Everybody is behind us and agree with us that we want to take the product to this XYZ point. And the best way to do is if you can stitch the story. How do you make sure you stitch your customer's problem with the solution that you're pitching, right? And it's an art, like it's a storytelling. Like, and this is something we learned in MBA as well, that if you can be a good storyteller, you will have your audience convinced, and everybody's going to be, aligned with your vision, and it's easier for you to get the work done. So I agree with you 100%.
I'll add on to that too. I think you've got to know your audience, right? And, talking to the CVP of your department is very different than talking to your developers. And you've got to be able to connect to them at their level in the language that they want to take. And so, a question that I get back when I'm interviewing people is, do I need to write code? And the answer that I always give to them is, you don't need to write code, but you should be able to read it. Because when you're going to work with your developers, and you should be able to talk to them in a language that is comfortable, that they understand.
And they respect you then,
That's
right?
True.
If you can speak their language, if you can understand their problems and where they are coming from, they'll respect you more, and it'll be easier for you to work with them. So this is actually a good segue into the next question, Jeff, which Ankita and I both keep getting on LinkedIn a lot, that there are a lot of people who are reaching out to us from different backgrounds that, hey, I'm in literature, or I'm in finance, or I'm in, auditing, but I want to be a PM in a big tech company. Can I switch, or what's the requirement? So what's your suggestion or tips to those folks who are coming from a totally different background, but want to be a PM?
Yeah. So the first thing I would say is, the people that reach out and say, I've always dreamed of being a PM at Microsoft or Meta or Google or Amazon or whatever it happens to be, is the first thing I'll say is, forget that, right? Think about the experiences that you want to have, and then go find out how to have that experience. Find the place that allows you to do it, whether it's at Microsoft or anywhere else, because that's going to be the thing that keeps you engaged in your job, keeps you learning. Right? There's countless stories of people that have gotten their dream job at one of these big companies and then landed in a place that didn't allow them to express the creativity, the skills that they wanted, and then they left and because they had a terrible experience there. So first thing is focus on the experience you want to have and find the place that allows you to go do that. From there, going back to your question, it's how do I go from a different role into product management? And I would say, probably shouldn't say this, but product management isn't hard, right? Product management is really just about finding a problem, right? And then finding a solution to it.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
And as long as you can describe it and get people to pay for it, buy into it, then you're a product manager.
Yeah.
Right. And everybody does this on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Right. So, the skills of storytelling, you get down to it when you're actually executing, you need some analysis type work and all this, but you can learn these along the way.
It's a job.
Finding the problem that has to go be solved
Right.
and articulating a way to do it, that's all it takes.
I love what you said because you articulated it so well for everyone. Because I feel when you're an outsider, not in the industry of product management, it seems like a big giant that you don't understand how are people designing such deep experiences, right?
Yep.
But when you think about the experience you want to do, because that is something that I did personally, I think Rishab, you also did when we met in Arizona. Microsoft was one company we wanted to design products for because personally, I connected with the principles and stuff that Microsoft does apart from just designing products, but what are the other diversity and inclusion initiatives that Microsoft takes. So for me, working for such a company was so important. And when I entered that company, it was like a dream come true. And I was like, yes, I want to design more products for this company because I feel so passionate about its mission and vision. So I feel that. And then the articulation part, which I think Jeff always does it so well, which the entire team talks about every time he gives us a presentation or something, which is, I think, so important, which I'm learning, of course, from you and from a lot of people in our org.
Yeah. No, I think also like Jeff, like you mentioned, as long as the candidate or the person has curiosity to learn, you will learn anything on the job. Like before I joined Microsoft, I did not know so many things. And like, initially the first week I had this imposter syndrome. Like I'm like, everybody knows so much stuff. How will I learn this, right? But at the end of the day, if you're actually curious and you're passionate about solving the problems the customers have, you will figure it out on the way. You don't need to have like a PhD or a master's degree in like, computer science or like, data mining or things of that nature. You'll figure it out on the job. Like, especially like in today's world, there's so many YouTube videos, free courses out there that you can learn without going to school as well. Right?
Yeah.
So next question, Jeff, but I think you already answered that, which was a person who wants to get into a big company like Microsoft, Google, Apple. What do they do differently? So we can move on from that question, Ankita. You can answer or ask the next question.
Okay. Yeah. So I think my next question will be, in today's world, with the increase in technology and the number of options people have, I feel like Rishab said, YouTube, LinkedIn, so many other product management courses are online. And there's just so much information. I remember when I was interviewing, I was just like, okay, what do I study? Where do I go? And then I called up certain people. One of them was also Rishab because he was working at Microsoft. And I was like, what are the resources that you would suggest if I had like, I literally had like 2 days to prep and give the interview. So I was like, if I have 2 days or a week or a month. So my question to you as a product leader is, what are your favorite resources that you can suggest the audience to go and learn about product management?
Yeah, this is an interesting question and one that I struggle with a little bit because there are a ton of resources, there's a ton of books. I have 2 kids and I equate this question to parenting books in some degree, right? When you become a parent, the first thing you do is, or you're preparing to become a parent, you go out and get some books that teach you how to do things, how to train your child to sleep, whatever it happens to be. And what I realized very early on is that whatever you're thinking is the right thing to do, you can find a book that supports your idea, your thought process, and you can find another book that tells you the complete opposite of that. And I think management books and product management books and all of this training is the exact same way. Whatever your idea is, there's something there to support it. And so I don't think there is a great resource out there that I would put everybody towards and say, go read this. The thing that I will say is, don't be afraid to put stuff down. Try it. Pick stuff up, read it. If it doesn't resonate, put it down, go find something new. In a 200-page book, and I've done this, in a 200-page book, you might find 5 pages that are useful. And those 5 pages are great. You're going to take something away from it, but find that, move on to the next one. And what you'll find is, what most people find is they already know what they want. They're already thinking about things the right way. What the books do, what the podcasts do, is help them put words to it, crystallize it in a way that they haven't thought of before, that then sticks with them, and they can put it into practice, and they can bring it to others and debate it. And that's really where I think the learning comes from, is when you interact with other people and you debate what you're learning. That said, if you want a book, if you want an author, the one thing I will say is go read Peter Drucker.
Yeah.
Everything today is probably based off of his writings from 50, 60 years ago. It's all variants of that. And so he was a prolific writer. If you want to start, there's probably a book, I think it's called The Essential Drucker. Start there. And then see if you want to read other things.
Yeah, you're a Peter Drucker fan. You told me a book even when I was interning, and I asked you for your favorite book. So yeah, definitely. It's a great book.
Yeah. I will add, I'm not, huge on social media. I tend to consume a little bit. But there is one woman right now that I do follow on LinkedIn. Her name is Kizner Snyder. She's the CEO of Textio, and she posts a lot about a bias in writing and job postings. She's a great follow.
Okay.
So for anybody that's looking for that particular topic, I would definitely recommend Kizner Snyder as a good follow.
Oh, amazing. Yeah.
I think even a lot of people today, the way things are changing, they want to consume all this knowledge via podcast or like videos instead of reading
Quick
books.
bites. Yeah.
Not, even if they are listening to a podcast, it can be like a 1 hour long or 45 minutes long podcast. But I'm seeing that transition where folks have started reading or listening to audio books versus like reading it, while on the go, like driving a car or while like, just cooking food. So that helps a lot. But I think I agree with him. Peter Drucker, things he said like half a century ago, they are so valid. Like, and especially in the our technology industry, you would not imagine, but they do come out and they're so strong.
Right.
All right. So next question, Jeff. Culture is very important to Gen Z and millennials today. And I think a lot of folks who are switching jobs or like, entering into the job market, they look for a company which has a healthy culture and they can associate with. So how do you as a product leader, lay down the culture, or improve the culture? Or what are your culture, in general, your approach around it?
Yeah, I'm gonna spin this question a little bit. I mean, let's get to it. But one of the things that I see, and this is definitely a generational difference between us, as we've talked about this in the past, is that you blend your personal lives into your work lives a lot more than my generation does, my parents, my grandparents. And that's still a little bit foreign to me. I remember, oh God, I don't know how long ago this was. I think I was at my first job after university, and I was in New York City at the time, and I was out on Long Island having dinner with my grandparents, and I was thinking about leaving that job and moving to another company. And I was talking to my grandfather about it, who's World War II vet and just totally blue collar, worked on cars, and I said to him, I think I'm going to leave this company. I'm going to think about moving to another one. He said, why? And I said, I'm just not having fun anymore. He said, what are you talking about? Fun. It's a job. Jobs are not supposed to be fun. And that was the mindset. That was the generational mindset. And it was mine that started to think about, well, I want to have fun. Right?
Yeah.
But there was still a divide between what you did at work and what you did outside.
That's true.
And the next generations are saying, no, there's a blend. There's no divide. So the culture is more important than it's ever been. And so while I still keep a healthy separation between work and life, I do my job and I love it. I love problem solving. I love helping people grow their careers. When I stop doing that, I go do things that have nothing to do, and I don't think about work, right? I enjoy my hobbies. I enjoy my family, and those are separate. But I recognize the people that I'm working with now that are coming out of university don't feel the same way. And it's my responsibility as a leader to give them an environment and help them create an environment together that allows them to get what they want.
Absolutely.
While I can still get what I want out of that.
That's true.
And so understanding what you're all looking for is probably the first thing, right? And so Ankita, I know you've spun up a reverse mentoring program.
Yes.
And I think that type of program for people like me is invaluable to just come into a conversation and say, I don't know, you teach me something.
Right.
And then I'm going to help, I'm going to figure out how to integrate that into the environment.
Yep.
Right. Yeah. That's an amazing program. We have heard this feedback. I think a number of leaders within Microsoft, since I started the program within Microsoft, have told me that it's so difficult for them to ask that question to somebody they are working with closely within their org, but they can go and ask others that, hey, how do you maintain like work-life balance and also post a lot on LinkedIn or other social channels? I want to learn. Or what are the hot topics on LinkedIn that I can post about, because I'm trying to start, writing more on LinkedIn and have that social presence with the new generation. So I feel, that was just an idea that me and one of my friends at Microsoft, Monica, came across, and we were like, why not we share our ideas and tell people, because there was so much of potential there in which people can learn from us as much as we learn from all the people who have been in the industry for a long time. So that was a fab response. I feel as a company, Microsoft is amazing to work for, and culture-wise also all the leaders like you have been promoting reverse mentorship or cultures where they listen to people right out of school. So,
yeah, I think I was listening to this podcast last week about leadership. And one of the things that leaders want to do is hire great talent and retain great talent. And the way you can retain great talent today is, with having that culture and understanding the audience or your team, right? Again, and the best way to do is like asking them and understanding, what is that motivates them or makes them feel happy when they're doing their work. Because I think the mindset that we have today is that there are so many jobs out there. There's so many opportunities out there.
yeah.
And life is too short to work in a job that you don't like and you're not passionate or you don't feel like inspired about. So, I think this generation doesn't mind going through 5 or 7 different jobs till they get into the one that they love or the culture that they love or not. So I think in that regard, it becomes even more important to have a good culture so that you can retain that talent, because it takes time for a person to be in the team, understand the team, and then start contributing and then grow in the team, right? And if the person is not motivated in the beginning, they will leave, right? So I echo with you.
I'm sure Jeff will agree to disagree on that.
With what?
No. I definitely agree. I was just going to say, for the aspiring managers, for the aspiring leaders that are trying to help build that culture, what I would say is you could also treat this like a product management exercise.
Oh, yeah.
Right? Your staff are your customers.
Right.
The team is your customers. And, one of the things that I would say is your customers don't always know how to tell you what they want.
Yeah.
That's true.
And so it's listening, it's understanding, but turning that around into a product that you can actually deliver and sell that is meaningful to more than one person.
Exactly.
Because one person will tell you exactly what they want, but it's very niche at that point. And so I think it's hard when it comes to culture. I think this is much harder than creating a piece of software.
That's true.
Because it's so personal to people.
And people are complex.
Yeah.
Much more complex than the software.
People are. The hardest, this is what I like to say, the hardest part about working with humans is that they're human.
Yep. Yeah.
That's true. Okay. So let's move to the next question. Very cliche question, but we all want to know, the audience want to know, one piece of advice that you would give to 21-year-old Jeff today.
Easy. Take more vacation. No, it's true. I was 21. I was, I was out of college. I was living in New York City. I had a great apartment in the East Village for those that know New York City. I had an awesome dog. I had a girlfriend who I'm now married to. I was living the dream, right? And I loved my job because I just got to solve problems. I remember I walked in there early on, and my specialty started out in email systems. Right? So I was designing email systems, and I walked into this company and job, and And the email systems that were owned or being run by the IT people there at the time was on a Linux system. And my boss said, hey, we want to move this to something called Microsoft Exchange. We don't know anything about it. Here's a book. And that's why I hadn't even heard of the product before. But that's what I've always liked, is learning something new, getting my hands dirty, and then figuring out how to build it. And that spun into my consulting career at Microsoft, and then ultimately became, product management. But I was living the dream at 21.
Right.
I had everything, and I worked a ton. And I just didn't take as much vacation as I should have. I've got 2 kids, I've got a wife, I've got a mortgage on my house, and I've got responsibilities. And so while I take more vacation now than I did when I was at 21, I had much more freedom back then.
That's true.
And I don't think people realize this enough. I think I'm young, I'm early in career, I've got to be driven, I've got to show that I care about this position, I care about this company, that I'm driven to succeed. And as a manager, we get all that. You show up, you do your job, you're accountable, you're curious. I see all of that. Take the time off so you can go do that and be refreshed and be energized to do that. So that's the thing I did wrong, is I didn't take enough vacation. I mean, maybe if I made one choice, it was the 90s, it was New York City, it was the tech boom. It was so easy to get a job. And most people moved from company to company every, 2 years and doubled and tripled salaries. And, we saw that a few years ago as well.
I was about to say that.
Right.
I've always been in it, for the long haul. I didn't jump around a little bit. I think I went my first company, second, and then Microsoft in a couple of roles. So, 3 years, 3.5, 4 years, and then now Microsoft for 16 or 17.
Oh, wow.
Like that.
Right.
So I didn't, and maybe, I could be making a lot more money or could have made more money then, but I don't know, how much can you use, really? I just should have had a little bit more fun, I think.
That's such a fun answer.
So why, Jeff, if I have to double click on that, you'll say that because if people take more vacations, especially when they're young, they'll come back more motivated and they'll come back more refreshed to be more driven, versus if they keep on working, there'll be a point where they get burnt out and they're like, I'm done, I'm leaving.
I think that's the general wisdom. And everybody's different. I know people, I have people on my team. I've got a team of about 30 people, and I know a couple of them that just don't like to take vacation. They like what they do. They like staying at home, and they're refreshed and motivated every day that I see them. So, it's a generalization, but overall, for most of us, not every day is perfect. I mean, there are some days you come into work and it's hard. You don't know what you're doing. You don't know why you're there. You wonder how anything actually ever gets accomplished. And those days can be demoralizing.
100%.
And stepping away from those is super important. And I think it's hard to step away from those days, brush them off, when you've just got to come back day after day after day. But if you can truly, what we say is unplug, if you can truly step away from work and ignore it for a week, 2 weeks, whatever it takes for you, then I do think it does help. So yes, it's a generalization. It's a bit of a cliche, but I do believe there's.
Yes. I think that's why we love to go to national parks where there's no internet.
No internet,
You can't connect to on your phone, on your laptop. You cannot
Nobody
see
can
any
reach us.
emails. You cannot see any teams, and you're just driving in the wilderness,
Yeah.
hiking. That's the best kind of vacation.
Because in today's world, it's hard to unplug too, right?
Yeah.
You carry your devices, even if you don't carry your work laptop. I have friends who work on Sundays too. So it's like,
It's
really
like
weird.
it's like a drug addiction. Like you're like, let me check my email. It's been like more than 5 hours. Let me check my email. Let me check my team if something is going on.
That's true.
You have to be purposeful about it. You have to be intentional, and you have to be committed, right? And I've gone through sort of phases and the transition of my career. I was like a lot of other people where I would work all the time. Certainly I didn't take enough vacation, as I said, but even in the last 10 years, I would go to work all day. I would come home, I would do some family stuff, and then kids would go to bed, and then I'd sit on the couch and do more work. And the TV's on in the background. And And at some point I realized I don't need to do this. I can be as effective if I unplug at 5 and maybe come back. We work around the globe. And so sometimes you got to do that late night meeting.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I try to stay away from that. I try to stay away from Saturdays and Sundays. I mean, they creep in occasionally.
Right.
But I had to train myself to do this and had to be purposeful about it and just make that decision. And so nobody's going to do it for you, right? You have to be the one to say you're going to go do it and be committed to doing it.
Okay, one last thing, because I know before you move to the last question, this is a very good point. I really want to ask you from the audience, because I know there are very cultural differences also, and there are a lot of people who are watching us from around the world.
Yeah.
I personally, since we have lived in multiple countries, I know that it is much easier to do that in a country like US, where people have that individuality and they respect the time beyond. But maybe in some companies or countries, it's difficult to unplug. So what message do you have for them if they are listening to you and they're like, oh, if you wish if we had that choice?
Keep trying to change the culture. I mean, these things take time. It's going to be evolutionary in some places. I'm certainly not an expert in cultures all around the globe, but I've traveled and I've worked with folks in countries all around the globe, and I've seen them change. One of the places I love to travel for work is Japan, and I've seen the culture there shift quite a bit in the 14 years I've been traveling there for business, where I think the first year I was there, the first couple of years I was there, I mean, what you see, the stereotypes are actually true. People are sleeping in the train station, just getting a nap and then going back to work.
That's what I've heard.
And that started to change. And I think it's partly because there's a younger generation that's coming up saying this is not the life that we want to have.
Yeah.
I think some of it in some areas are governmental change, saying this is not the life that we want our country to have.
Right.
But it takes a few voices to start standing up and speaking out and saying, we've got to go change these things. So, culture doesn't change overnight. But as long as somebody is consistent about wanting to make that change and can tell the story and bring people along, it'll happen over time.
I think especially social media and internet, folks in India or Japan or other countries can see the culture maybe in Europe or in America and say that, hey, you know what, maybe this culture seems more healthier and we want to associate with that. And then the changes in the culture begin at the grassroots level, right?
Yeah.
When there's a pushback coming from the grassroots level, and then the leadership is like, we have to hear this, right? So that we are in alignment with our team and we don't want to be like, on different tangents. Yeah. A fun question, Jeff, have you traveled to India yet?
I have not been to India.
I always ask him this question.
Yeah.
Like the first time I met him, I'm like, have you been to India? He's like, no.
No, I haven't been in there. I work very closely with some teams out there, and just, haven't had an opportunity or a need. I mean, I do like traveling for work, but I'd like to make sure it's really needed. And it just hasn't been a need for me yet, but hopefully someday soon.
Sometime in the future.
Yeah.
Hopefully in our wedding, maybe.
For what?
If I can find a way to expense that, maybe.
Jeff is like, Ankita, are you checking your email? I sent an email right now. Last question, Jeff. Folks listening to you, if they want to connect with you and they want to learn more from you, how do they do that?
Yeah, well, I'm going to disappoint the audience there. I'm not super active on social media. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm mostly a consumer. I know every time Ankita tags me on LinkedIn, I get a ton of new requests for the network, and I'll accept all of them. At some point, I'm going to think of something that I want to say and then start putting it out there. But for the moment, I'm largely a consumer. So if you want to join my network, I'm happy to approve the request and grow the network and maybe learn from you all.
Yeah, that's amazing. We will link Jeff's LinkedIn profile down below so that you can click and send him a
Get
request.
ready for a lot of requests.
But yeah, definitely. I personally believe, because I know he has this power of articulation, you can be an amazing creator on LinkedIn. Like if you start sharing your thoughts on product management, culture, leadership, I think a lot of followers will be waiting out there to
Someday,
look for your... Maybe in the future. Yeah.
All right. I'll keep that one in mind.
But thank you so much, Jeff. This was amazing. This was beyond what what we envisioned, because I know there are so many people who would love to learn from a product leader like you and get inspired on how to get into product management and have that will that, hey, it's not that difficult. It's something that they can learn. It's a skill that anybody can learn. So thank you for sharing your knowledge.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jeff. I'm pretty sure folks listening to you, they must have learned a lot today, and especially the way you broke it down into simpler things versus like, going into technical stuff. I love that. I think everybody associates more when you have a simple story to tell, and I think that's what you did. And thank you so much again for being here. And folks, if you like this video, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to our channel. And we would love to hear from you if you want to, tell us what topics you would want to hear in the future. So please comment, let us know what topics you would want to hear from us, and we will get the experts from that field.
Yes. And any last words, Jeff, on Curious Souls?
Just going to say thanks for having me. I had a great time. I'm looking forward to, listening to the other episodes in the series.
Yes.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Thank you.